Nostalgia is a strange and powerful thing. It is the reason that people love that old Tron movie that came out in the 80s with Jeff Bridges, even though objectively it is complete garbage. I do like the newer version, though. I enjoyed that quite a bit. But the older Tron movie stinks, in my opinion. I think it sucks. I think the story's not great, the acting's not great, but people love it because they saw it when they were kids and they have this nostalgia for it. It's the same reason they love that older Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. They love, some of the older stuff, even though some of it's not good. Now, some things that are filled with nostalgia are great, like a lot of the Star Wars movies and stuff like that. But nostalgia is a powerful thing. And people hold on to things that are nostalgic. And so today we're going to talk about a knife that is very nostalgic for me. Today we're going to talk about the Cold Steel Voyager series. Now, the reason the Voyager is nostalgic for me is because it was my first truly quality knife that I ever bought. Before I bought this Cold Steel Voyager, I owned a bunch of gas station, Walmart, Winchesters, Camillus that were garbage steel, garbage lockup. They didn't have pivot points that were adjusting. They would wear out. I would lose them, all that stuff. So I feel very nostalgic about the Cold Steel Voyager because it was my first high quality knife. And so we're going to talk a little bit about this Voyager. So let's get into the specs, guys. So you're looking at on this Voyager a 4-inch blade of the newer ones are made of AUS 10A. This is the older version, and they make even an older version before that. We'll talk about that a little bit, but this is of AUS 8A steel. It's 3.5 millimeters. You can get this in a Tanto version. You can also get this in a Vaquero version, and they make them in larger sizes where the blades are 5.5 inches. But this particular model, the large, is what we're going to look at. So you're looking at a 5.5 or 5.25 inch handle. It has a Griv X handle with aluminum liners. It's Grivery, it's a plastic, it's a glass reinforced nylon. So yeah, that's what you're looking at with the handle. And then you have those, you can see those aluminum liners, just barely probably. You're looking at about 4.6 ounces. The newer AUS 10 models go for around $50. And like I said, you can get them in an XL size. You used to be able to get them in a medium size where it had a 3-inch blade and a smaller handle as well. For the extra large versions, you're going to be looking at about $70. So as always, we're going to get into what I like, what I dislike, and something unique about this nostalgic blade that I own. So first of all, what I really like about this is the Cold Steel Voyager has an extremely comfortable handle. Now, I've talked about this to no end, but guys, I have big, meaty, beefy hands, and the Cold Steel Voyager fits nicely in them. I mean, I'm able to just easily get my hand in there, and it is as ergonomic as it could possibly be. I don't have to worry about my finger going down here. I can get my entire hand in there, and it's not so thin that it feels uncomfortable in the hand. It's quite hand filling without being too overly thick. So I do love the handle. And if you have big, meaty hands like I do, it's going to fit great. The older medium Voyagers, they were too small. I couldn't get my entire hand in one of those. They were probably more suited for people with smaller hands or girls, anyone with a smaller hand. Another thing I really, really like about this, and a lot of Cold Steels are like this now. I talked about it in my Code 4 review. It has a really smooth deployment for being a lockback. This Voyager is almost 10 years old. I got it in 2011, I believe. So, you would assume it had smoothed out over time. The liners, I believe, are what make it pretty smooth. Some of their other models that Cold Steel puts out, they're directly on G10, and even though they have those phosphor bronze bushings, they just aren't as smooth. I think that this having aluminum liners in it makes it a smoother to deploy knife. So I really, really like that about this lockback. It's a pretty smooth deploying lockback. Another thing I really like about this knife is that it is super tough. I have put this thing through the ringer and it has come out on top. There's been no chipping of that tip. I will talk about that at the thin tip. You see that right there. But you can see on that edge, it's been sharpened. It's been torn up. It's been used. I used it when I worked on grounds at the college that I went to, and I just used it to cut open mulch bags left and right. I used it constantly. And it is a super, super tough knife. And part of that is due to the triad lock. And we've talked about the triad lock, and you can find diagrams online of how the triad lock works. But it's a lockback with essentially a pin that takes a lot of the brute force that would be put on a lock like this. So it is super, super tough. And I do love that about a lot of Cold Steel knives. And there's a lot of other knives, a lot of other knife companies that have really tough and strong knives. Benchmade, even Kershaw, a lot of other knives are really, really tough, but I do like how strong this is. I also love that full flat grind. Now, I don't prefer full flat grinds. I like a hollow grind. The reason I don't prefer full flat grinds is usually because those tips are too precise for my liking. And that's what happens a lot when you get a full flat grind like that, especially on a clip point like this. So, but I do like how slicey this knife is and how great it is for food prep or just slicing through material. It's going to be a lot smoother than, show you this Benchmade Crooked River. See, that's not full flat grind right there. I don't know all the grind names. I need to be better about learning those grind names. But anyway, I do like this full flat grind. And last thing, overall, I think this is a good price for a knife like this. For the new versions in AUS 10, you're looking at $50. AUS 10 is a steel that, from what I've heard, is comparative with 154 CM, which is what Benchmade used for years. Fantastic steel. From what I've used of AUS 10, I did own a Voyager in AUS 10. I traded it off for something else. You know what we knife guys do. But I really enjoyed AUS 10. I thought it held an edge fantastically. And you can see some cut tests on YouTube and that it holds up really, really well. I really like this AUS 8, like I've talked about a million times. I think AUS 8's a good steel for the price, but that new AUS 10, a knife for $50 with a triad lock, with a Grivery handle, with aluminum liners. It's not super heavy. It's pretty lightweight for being how large it is. I mean, 4.5 ounces, you're under 5 ounces. That's less than the Rat 1. So I think for the size and for the price, you're getting a great knife, for a great deal. It's not crazy super cheap, but it is well worth that $50 if you're looking for a good first knife that you're wanting to spend a few bucks on, but not too much. So let's get into what I don't like. You guys know I love a clip point. Like I just showed you, I do love a clip point. I love a Bowie style blade. But I don't like how thin that tip is. Yeah, I'm going to talk about it. Some of you guys love those thin tips. You're like, well, what if I need to dig out a splinter? I don't know. I'll get tweezers for that. I just don't prefer a blade to be that thin and that precise at the tip. I'm too worried about it breaking. That being said, this has never broken on me, and I have used this quite a bit. It still does worry me about that breaking, even though I've owned it for a decade. I'd prefer something a little bit more stout. A folding knife with a clip point. This is kind of what I love. This Crooked River right here, that tip, it's a little more stout than on that Voyager, and I think I prefer that. It's still not overly stout. It's not like it's a Tanto or anything like that, or a reverse Tanto, where it's too stout to where you can't do stabbing if you need to, whatever you might be using it for. So I would prefer just a little bit more stout of a tip on that Voyager. But that's just me. I know it's just a personal preference. Again, that's what a review is, guys. So I would prefer a little bit stronger of a tip on there. Another thing that I don't love about this is it is a little thick in pocket. It's not overly thick, but I think what gets me with this knife is it's pretty light. I mean, it's pretty darn light for its weight. It's a little bit lighter, I believe, than the Benchmade Crooked River, but it's a bit thick in pocket, about as thick as the Crooked River. So, that's another thing I don't love about it. If it was a tiny bit thinner, I think I would prefer that. But overall, it's not terribly thick. It's just takes up a little bit more room than I would prefer in the pocket. But when it comes to things I like and don't like, the things that I don't like are very, very minute, and there's not much I can really complain about this knife. Any in the series, whether it's the XL, the Tanto, whatever, I think they're nearly perfect knives. They really are for the price, for what you're getting, for the strength you're getting. I honestly prefer the Voyager series over the Recon series. I will do a review on the Recon 1, the Cold Steel Recon 1. It's at Cold Steel right now, and they're not doing shipping because of the whole COVID-19 thing. Mine's, it's there for servicing because there was some up and down play. But once I get that back, I will do a review on that. But I think I prefer the Voyager series, and I might prefer it over the Code 4. I haven't kind of made up my mind on that. Anyway, there's not much I dislike about the Voyager series. I think they're fantastic. So let's move on to something unique. So Cold Steel has a lot of hard use folders, right? We just mentioned a couple, the Recon 1, the Code 4. There are a ton of others, even some of their liner lock ones like the Luzon. Those are pretty hard use, even though they're liner locks. They seem pretty tough from what I've heard and what I've seen. Essentially any knife that Cold Steel puts out, it's made to take a beating, and that's kind of what they market themselves at. And in their videos are kind of silly, but I think they kind of market exactly how they want to. They want to be the strongest, toughest knives, even if they're not the prettiest or have the smoothest deploying. But what I really, really like about this knife is this is the series, the Voyager series, that's going to perform like a high-end knife at a mid to budget price range. With the new ones, you're getting AUS 10, which is a mid-range steel. It's a really good steel. It's going to hold an edge well. It's not going to be terribly difficult to sharpen. You're getting a super strong lock, nice feeling grivery handles with aluminum liners. You're getting a knife that's going to perform fantastically. That's probably going to last you your entire life. Like I said, I think I got this when I was 16, so I've had it for almost 10 years, and it's lasted me extremely well. There's no play in the blade. Yeah, I've adjusted that pivot point, but I really, really like that Cold Steel's offering this knife with this quality for this price. I think that's fantastic. I think that is awesome. One last thing I do want to mention, and I hate to mention it again because it's something that we talk about a lot with Cold Steels. They still have their pocket clip issue. I'm going to stop mentioning that as something that I don't like, because with the models that you guys have probably watched reviews on over and over again, with the things I've done reviews on, that's just still an issue. With that grivery right there, the grivery is super grippy. It's fantastic. It keeps your hand in there. But having that strong pocket clip over there, it's just too strong, and it tears up your pockets. All the jeans I've ever owned, really, you can see the pockets. The right pocket is a little bit torn up from some of those Cold Steel folders. So it's something I don't like, but it's not something I want to focus on, because, you can sand that down a bit and make it to where it's not so bad. And, with this knife that I've owned for almost 10 years, it's actually not as rough as it was, and it's pretty smooth out of the pocket now. So yeah, guys, overall, would I recommend it? Absolutely. It's a fantastic knife. It performs like a $100 knife for about half the price. And it's a knife that honestly will probably last your lifetime. So if you haven't picked up a Cold Steel Voyager, I would highly encourage you to do that. Pick it up in whatever style you want. If you want something more stout, pick up the Tanto version. If you want something more kind of utilitarian, outdoorsy, you can pick up this clip point version. If you want something a little crazier, something more fun, maybe something as more of a tactical weapon, you could pick up that Vaquero version, and they all come in serrated options. They're just a great series, and I cannot recommend them enough. Guys, thanks so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next video.